Hey Brotherface, I decided to rate your last video as C cubed. Cute, cool, and a little bit creepy. This week is mostly going to be amusing on a drive I took recently, but first a bit of backstory. Starting with the conclusion. I've decided to accept the Padres' recent offer to trade the hatchback for the truck, at least for the upcoming winter season. It was a surprisingly hard decision to make, especially considering I call Keystone home these days. Papa brought up the idea that I might be emotionally attached to the hatchback, which is probably not totally unfounded. But I consider myself a pretty logical and rational person, and last Saturday I was able to convince myself that the reason I was not going to make the trade was at least 95% financially motivated. Even today, I'm not stoked on having my gas mileage, and I was telling myself that the upfront investment required to get a topper so that the truck can be a functional vehicle for puppy transportation was especially stressing on my pocketbook. Upon initial investigation, it seemed the cost for a topper was going to be in the neighborhood of $500 or more. So on Saturday, I balked at making the trade. And on Sunday, I drove from Denver to Keystone during the first real snowstorm of the year. And I saw an 18-wheeler and 3 to 4 cars in ditches. And while I did fine this time, it reminded me of some drives last year that were frankly very stressful. There was one drive where I wasn't sure I was going to make it to the tunnel. And in fact, I think the only reason I did is that on at least one occasion, someone who had already given up on their vehicle actually physically pushed me from behind while my wheels spun feebly trying to gain traction. And if that person hadn't gotten unlucky before me, I might have been the one on the side of the road pushing vehicles. So the fact that I didn't immediately take the opportunity to upgrade to four-wheel drive and monster tires has given me some pause. Why did it take seeing cars in a ditch in order for me to make a decision for my own safety? And what larger implications does this incident have on human decision making? Often we hear progressive thinkers bemoan our species' apparent inability to be forward thinking. We find ourselves having to be reactive to a myriad of what in hindsight may appear to be predictable situations. When it rains, nobody thinks about water security. But when a drought cycles through, we are caught off guard. Today, there are a lot of educated people warning about the potential impacts of climate change and population growth. But as part of the reason for the apparent foot dragging to take serious action, in my story, the metaphorical equivalent of upgrading to the 4x4 truck, the fact that not enough people have seen the cars in the ditch, I'm not sure, but this incident and reflection has humbled me a bit. I hesitated because I perceived the truck would be more expensive than the hatchback now and in the future. I didn't like the idea of the inconveniences resulting from the financial belt tightening that will be required over the next couple months as a result of the upfront investment. And having the truck doesn't actually guarantee that I won't end up in the ditch, which are all arguments people present when it comes to the debates over taking dramatic action on climate change. I'm not saying they're right, I just might be a little more empathetic to these points than I have been in the past. And perhaps empathy rather than self-assurance of one's position on any issue is a healthier place to start a constructive conversation. Anyway, I will be making the trade to the truck this winter. And much to my delight, the Padres were able to find a topper on Craigslist for only $150. I wonder if the action on climate change metaphor would extend to this happy part of my story. Because obviously, everything comes down to last Sunday's drive.